is my country, land of my birth. This is my country, grandest on earth. I pledge This is my country, land of my birth. This is my country, grandest on earth. I pledge thee my allegiance, America, the whole. For this is my country to have and to hold.
Well, welcome to Veterans Corner, another episode here at the Framingham Access Studios. Today we have a very interesting program for you. We have a very distinguished guest. His name is Jerry Halterman, and he's a veteran of World War II, United States Navy. He was at Pearl Harbor when the Japanese attacked on December 7th, 1941. And he's one of the rare left survivors that are still living. And how are you today, Jerry?
Very well, thank you.
And thank you very much for coming over here and spending time and telling us maybe some of the recollections you have, which was over 60 years ago today.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk, because when I talk, why, I remember the 429 men that died December the 7th in the capsized USS Oklahoma.
Well, that was your ship, the Oklahoma?
I served 18 months on it with all the training that we were going through, and we knew that we weren't being trained for nothing. So we suspected then that there'd probably be hostilities, especially because of the strategic position of Hawaii to interfere with the Japanese going all the way down the coast to Australia.
Well, you brought a lot of props here. I see that you've got some charts in the background, and we'll go to that later on. I see that you brought a photograph or a map or whatever you want to say, and this is Pearl Harbor in 1941.
That's to show how small the harbor was. You could see almost everything that was going on in the harbor, and pay particular attention to the oil tanks.
Oh, over here?
That are all around here. Because if the Japs had hit those oil tanks, the Battle of Midway would not have occurred in June of 1942. And the Battle of Midway was the turning point of the war.
Why do you say that?
Because I was on duty in the communications office.
Was that right here?
Yes, right here. There's no, that's where we were billeted. The communications office was on down where this red mark is here. And I was on duty December the 6th, 1941, when a message came in from the USS Ward. I think I typed the first message of World War II. It was from the USS Ward.
That was a submarine?
No, it was a destroyer.
Oh, okay.
Saying they had fired on and dropped depth charges on a submarine at the entrance of the harbor. So I handed that to the communications officer for him to route around, and then I was relieved to walk back to the receiving station here for breakfast, shower, and turn in. And so that, and I no sooner got back than I was the only one authorized to sleep in on the second floor. When the Japanese, I heard this noise, and I go over to the window, and there are the Japanese planes using our building here, this building, to make a turning point down on the harbor, where they would have the maximum length of water to drop their torpedoes in.
Well, did you actually see the planes coming in? Could you see the men or anything?
You could see their open cockpits, 2 cockpits, and they were open. You could see their faces. You could see the goggles that they had on.
And let's get back to the oil drums here. There's these oil. Why was this significant with why did this tie in with the Battle of Midway?
It was significant because the Japanese thought they were saving this because they wanted to come back and capture the island, and they would need it for using in the Battle of Midway.
Okay. Is there anything else in this map that you'd like to bring out?
No, not really. The submarine base was close by, right here. Right here.
Where was the Oklahoma and the Arizona?
The Oklahoma was tied up here, outboard of the Maryland.
Okay.
And so it protected the Maryland from the torpedoes. It did take a bomb.
Okay.
But the Oklahoma was open for admiral's inspection on Monday. And so it sank in about 8 minutes.
Oh, all the compartments were open.
Didn't give the men very much of a chance to get off of the ship.
It happened on a Sunday morning also.
Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where was the Arizona? Was it next to the Oklahoma?
The Arizona was back here.
Okay.
And when I was back at the back window looking out where the Japanese were dropping their torpedoes, watching the wakes go into the ships, the Arizona blew sky high. There too. But
what was your reaction at that time?
my reaction was, what can I do? I ran down to the basement to see if I could get a gun, because as erratic as I might be, I might accidentally hit one of those planes. They were so low.
They were that low, and you could probably hit them with a rifle or
With a baseball.
with a baseball. And by that way, you were a baseball player, weren't you, in high school? You played semi-professional. I don't want to get off the track here,
Well,
but
I came back to the States for Navy V-12 officer training, and I pitched for St. Ambrose, Davenport, Iowa, their team. And they had a strong baseball following in that three-city area: Rock Island, Moline, Illinois, and Davenport, Iowa.
where were you from now, Jerry? What was your hometown?
I was from Carbondale, Illinois.
Well, now that you mention that, I was looking at some of the paperwork you had here, and this paperwork here, it says Carbondale, this newspaper, it was dated December 7th, 1941. It says Carbondale people in danger zone in the South Pacific. Well, that Carbondale people were you were one of the Carbondale people in the danger zone.
Yes.
Is there anybody else here?
There are about six other fellows.
Oh, from our hometown?
They're in different services.
Oh, and they were concerned they didn't hear anything from you, so they maybe thought you were on the Oklahoma.
It took me a week to get a message back to my folks in Carbondale, Illinois, to let them know that I just said, am well, letter follows.
Am well, I am well, letter follows.
Am well,
Yeah.
letter follows, and I've got still got a copy of the telegram that I sent back.
Okay, you had a very close relationship with your mother, I understand.
The thing she did, she was a Lois McSparran Halterman. She was a one-room country school teacher. Now, she had the foresight to think and wonder what she could do that might help. So she settled on pulling me over into a side room and saying, "Get down on your knees and we'll pray for your safety." Do you know that worked in my case, and it worked in the case of my two brothers? We all three came through without a scratch. Not only that, it set up some miracles for me just by being where I was at a particular time, because I evaded several dangerous positions.
Well, the Oklahoma was actually torpedoed and tipped over upside down. And there were
Yes.
many crew members that were entrapped in there.
There were 32 that were trapped in there that were cut out the next day.
Oh, they had to use torches or acetylene torches?
Yeah, the yard men there did a wonderful job.
How did they know they were alive? They were tapping or?
They were tapping with a hammer or whatever they could use.
Wow.
Yeah.
They were entombed in there, darkness and all.
Some of the ones on the West Virginia, I understand, were not so
Fortunate, huh?
fortunate, because some 30 days later, they read the last entry in a diary that they had tried to come up with.
Mean they were alive for that many days?
They were alive.
With no power and no food and no light.
Yeah. So
You have mentioned to me something about parents and advice for parents or something. What was that all about?
yes, in the talks that I've given, I like to address the young parents there. I say to them, if you have a young son or daughter that's going away for the service, you may never see them again. And realizing that, the one thing you can do is to ask them to pray with you for your safety. And even it will stay with them the rest of their life and comfort them in all sorts of dangerous positions, because there's no atheist in a foxhole. If you've been shot at, you're not an atheist. Yeah.
Well, that's very well put. Now, your mother was quite a religious person.
She was, and she raised 7 children, including one son that she inherited through her husband, and he went into the Navy on the USS Houston. So that kind of sent me that way. The other thing that was very instrumental in it was in September 1939, when I graduated from high school. We were, in June of 1939, we were called into the assembly to listen to a radio broadcast by Hitler. Now, if you ever wanted to hear a lunatic, a crazy man, that was the impression that came across on that. But it stuck with me, and I felt that this guy could put the whole world into war because of the youth that was following him. And so that was one thing that triggered my going into the Navy. And the Navy couldn't have worked out better for me, and I give my mother a lot of credit for that.
You know, I see this here on the table you brought, and it says the century's biggest news. What is that? The ranking of headlines
Yes.
of the century, the biggest news? Would Pearl Harbor one of them?
Yes. This was pulled together by USA Today, and it listed number one, the little boy impact, the atomic bomb that he authorized to be dropped.
Oh, they call the atomic bomb the little boy?
Yes.
Okay.
And if he hadn't have done that,
What, drop the bomb?
yeah, I was being trained to be in charge of a landing craft for the invasion of Japan.
Well, the invasion of Japan never happened.
Because of the bomb.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, and the bomb would not have been dropped if Pearl Harbor hadn't happened. But Pearl Harbor also is instrumental in saving Great Britain from Hitler, and also for saving the Australia from the Japanese going down the coast over there, because the only thing that would have interfered with that would have been the naval base in Hawaii.
Okay, and that's the reason why they bombed it then.
That's the reason why they bombed it. Yeah.
Who was in charge of the Army and the Navy there at the time of Pearl Harbor? Can you tell me anything about the command positions of the generals and the admirals?
General Short was in charge of the Short installations.
General Short?
General Short.
Uh-huh.
And Admiral Kimmel was in charge of the fleet.
How do you spell it? K-I-M-M-E-L?
K-I-M-M-E-L, yeah.
Kimmel?
L, yeah. Anyway, the big mistake that the military made out there was putting them in separate
command positions.
Yeah,
command positions.
Positions, and not putting somebody over them.
Oh, like an umbrella to tie them together.
To tie them together, make them talk to each other. Because the ego of some people play to hold some of this special information as special to them and not sharing it with others.
Well, what were the ramifications then? They were talking to each other?
The ramifications were slow communications, for one thing.
Oh, that's devastating.
December the 7th.
Oh. One side didn't know about the other side.
They hadn't trained for it together. So that made a big impression. That made it easy for the. It was another thing that made it sitting target.
How do you know that? Were you close to the high positions in the command?
Well, I sensed that, but then I read a book on Pearl Harbor, Final Judgments on Pearl Harbor, that was commissioned by our government, and it came to that conclusion also. I could almost written the book. Now the natives sensed that out there. They were coming up with stockpiles of bandages and
the natives.
Things. Yeah, the natives, because they knew they were in a
the residents of Hawaii
position. Now, if the officers had studied their history at the Naval Academy, they would have discovered that the Japanese pulled the same damn thing against the Russians in 1905.
Oh, so history repeats itself.
History repeats itself.
Okay.
Now, some of the other things that came out of the Pearl Harbor thing was that Admiral Nimitz later wrote a book, and he said it was probably a good thing that we were bottled up in Pearl Harbor, because the Japanese ships were faster than our ships, and they could have chosen the place of battle, and we would have lost all the new men that we were sending out there in a hurry to man the ships.
Well, who was Admiral Nimitz? What was his job?
Admiral Nimitz, he became commander of the fleet.
Oh, the whole Pacific Fleet.
The whole thing.
Oh, he was a head honcho.
Head honcho.
Okay.
Now, I was on duty in the communications office typing messages in June of 1942, and the message came through from our own planes out there saying they had sighted 4 Japanese aircraft carriers. And the message came back through our office by cable out to Midway saying, exterminate the bastards.
Oh, in that many words, huh? It
That
came
many
right
words.
through as a message, huh?
Right through.
So, what do you know about the Battle of Midway then, with the petroleum, etc.? How was the Battle of Midway a turning point of the war in many respects?
It was a turning point mainly because of our torpedoing the 4 Japanese aircraft carriers that were out there on the message that came back through the office I was working in. And otherwise, that Battle of Midway would have been delayed maybe 6 months or a year.
We lost a lot of planes and pilots in that Midway too. A lot of them sacrificed their lives in that battle. I remember reading something about the torpedoes. The planes were coming in and they were getting blown right out of the air.
Yeah.
And these fellas knew that the odds of them getting back to their carrier, American planes, was very, very slim. I remember that portion. Yeah.
That didn't bother them. Maybe it should have to some extent. But the Japanese Zero planes did not have any armor to protect their pilots.
Well, they were very, very agile and light.
Because they were dedicating their lives to the emperor.
I see.
Where we had a consideration
For life.
for life.
Yeah.
And that's what made the Zeros so maneuverable.
They were the light duty, yeah. They were
Yeah.
very fast and moving around. Now listen, we've got some charts back here. Maybe we should take a little bit of a break here and an intermission type of thing, and after we get back, we can turn around and maybe you can show us a little bit about the charts and talk to us a little bit about them.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we'll take a little break.
All right.
Well, here we are back again after the intermission, and we've got the charts that Jerry brought with us of the USS Oklahoma, one of the ships that were destroyed during the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. And Jerry would like to speak a little bit about these charts. He's fairly familiar with them. And the charts tell a little bit about the USS Oklahoma. It talks about it when the beginning, when it was launched, a little bit of the history. The attack, which is down here in the lower left-hand corner, and also the capsizing and how it happened, and a little bit about the escape and rescue. Some of them were very, very fortunate that they were rescued. They were entombed for many, many days or hours in darkness, and they had to be tapping. He'll tell you a little bit about that. I don't want to take any lightning away from Jerry. And we'll go from there. And then he also talk about the salvage and beyond. And Jerry, you mentioned that you knew this signalman third class Paul Goodyear. Could you tell me a little bit about it, or well, my crew, or something?
Well, Paul was on duty that morning, and he saw the Japanese planes come in. But he's played the principal role in getting us all together, the crew that survived this attack. And he has made it a pilgrimage of his to make sure that the ones that died receive a monument for their sacrifice that they made that day. There were 429 went down with it, and it went down so fast because the watertight doors were open for admiral's inspection on the coming Monday, and so they really didn't have much of a chance of getting off. What he has done is come up with these posters with the snapshots of so many of the fellows that.
Oh, these
that
snapshots
died.
here you're talking,
Yeah.
right down here?
And
some of these right here, all along.
I don't know of any other posters that have done this.
So these were casualties? These were people that...
These were all casualties.
These are all the ones that died?
Yeah. And
also across the top here and down the side,
Yeah.
down this side, and
Yeah.
over in here and across in here.
so there was 429 families that never matured
Yeah.
out of the whole thing. And but then 3 of the guys that I rotated duties with when I was aboard the communications office in typing messages that came in and typing the news for distribution to the crew and this sort of thing, 3 of them died.
Oh.
Now, I know the kind of deaths that they suffered because they're down 3 decks below and you had red linoleum on the decks and the power going off, lights and all. The ship started to sink outboard from where it was tied up with the Maryland, and they trampled each other to death trying to get the hell out of there.
Why don't we stand up and maybe you can tell me a little bit about the beginning of this. You want to read that to us? We know a little bit about the Oklahoma.
Well, the ship was launched on March the 23rd, 1914. America's newest battleship was 583 feet long with a beam of 95 feet and a standard displacement of 27,500 tons. USS Oklahoma was a Nevada-class battleship. This was the first class of American battleships with boilers that were exclusively oil-fired. USS Oklahoma was commissioned in 1916 with a crew of 864 officers and enlisted men under the command of Captain Roger Wells. Well, when I first went aboard, my battle station was way down below carrying powder for the 14-inch guns that we had. And then by a lucky stroke, and I had this all up to my mother again, a prayer we did, the fellow that was mess cooking jumped ship. I was asked if I wanted to complete my mess cooking. I told the boatswain's mate yes. I only mess cooked for a week and a half. It was the yeoman's mess. And the captain's yeoman came to me and said, "Can you type, Jerry?" I said, "Yes." "How would you like to be a striker in the captain's office?" Now I'm up above, right next to the captain's cabin, looking out, watching the 14-inch guns fire for the first time. Things like that. Those are the kind of things that happened to me. The other thing that happened was the building that I was billeted in, the Japanese wanted to save it to make their turn down on the harbor in their flight path. That was another major thing. I can just rattle off so many different things that worked in my favor. And I thought, my Lord, I've been I've had the most wonderful experience. The Japs even gave me something to talk about.
What about this one here, Jerry? Can you tell me a little bit about this capsizing in your own words?
Well, the capsizing of it, it took a little while, but it turned right out like it was tied up alongside of the Maryland, and the Maryland was tied up right alongside of Fort Island. So it protected the Maryland from torpedoes. Now, one thing that played a big part in this whole thing was that the powers to be didn't think that the Japs could launch a torpedo attack in the 40-foot waters of Pearl Harbor. But the Japs had figured out to take the heavy steel fins off of the torpedoes and replace them with a light wood fins.
Well, so they could be lighter.
That kept it higher on the water so that the torpedoes, you could follow the torpedoes.
Very ingenious on the part of the Japanese.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, they were always known before the war as great copycats.
Yeah.
They could copy everything we did and come up with something better. Yeah.
I've noticed now that as this capsized, I see here that it's capsized, but there was still an airspace right in top here where evidently the crew members ran up to this and were entombed in here. And they were they tapping on the Vulcan with hammers?
There were 32.
32 men?
That were cut.
Up in here?
They cut through the hull and got them out the next day, 32 of them. So every time we had a reunion, why, we recognized that miracle that had happened.
Some of them came to the reunion? Some of the rescued 30 of the 32?
Well, some of the, yes, they did. Yes.
You had reunions throughout the years then?
Some of the Navy Yard crew, or Navy Yard workers would also come.
The ones that used the acetylene torches to cut them out?
Cut them out.
How did they know they were there?
By their hammering on the hull. And they're going around and listening.
It says right here, escape and rescue. You think you could read some of that to us here? It says Navy and civilian personnel.
Navy and civilian personnel quickly gathered on the overturned hull of the USS Oklahoma. Tools and ship plans were obtained, and the search for survivors began. 2 trapped crew members were discovered and spoken with through a discharge pipe. Unfortunately, when they were cut out, the rescuers found them dead, most likely killed by fumes from the cutting torch. Soon a party of civilian shipyard workers under the leadership of Julie DeCastro arrived with pneumatic tools and joined in the rescue efforts.
Well, it said right here, the trapped men were located at frames 22. What was that? What is that thing?
Frames 22, 78, 116, and 131. Frames are the structural ribs of the ship and numbered from the bow to the stern. Using pneumatic cutting tools by 8 o'clock a.m. on Monday, December the 8th, the first 6 men were rescued. By 11 o'clock a.m., 11 men were rescued from the Lucky Bag near turret number 4. Another 5 were freed from a 5-inch ammunition handling room by 2 p.m. Eventually, the number of rescued men reached 32. Rescuers continued to search for more survivors. One escapee had reported 125 men in a single compartment of the 3rd deck, but they were never found. Tapping was heard at frames 70 and 76, but holes cut at these locations reveal no additional survivors. The Navy kept guard on board the hull to listen for any additional tapping. Finally, at 8 a.m. on December the 11th, Lieutenant Commander Hobby called off the efforts. 429 sailors and Marines perished aboard the USS Oklahoma. There was the 2nd greatest number of casualties suffered by any ship at Pearl Harbor.
Well, very, very much of a disastrous.
They managed to take the guns off of the Oklahoma and put them on other ships.
Oh, they righted it. They righted it up. They righted it up.
They had a monster operation where they put up huge telephone poles on Ford Island and ran cables all the way out, attached them to the ship, and winched them upright. And as they did, why, they'd bring the bodies out and take them up to the, what's the one in Honolulu, outside of Waikiki Beach? They brought them out to the cemetery there.
Oh, I think it's a Peach Bowl, the Punch Bowl.
Punch Bowl.
Punch Bowl, yeah.
Punch Bowl.
Punch Bowl Cemetery, yeah.
A dormant crater.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's a lot of them buried there.
Yeah.
Yeah, from Korea, from Vietnam, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Now,
was given a tour out there, and the fellow I knew took me over to Ernie Pyle's grave, and Ernie Pyle was one of the foremost writers in World War II.
Yeah, he was killed, wasn't he, in battle? He was a photographer,
Yes.
wasn't he? Or,
Yes, he was.
and he was killed in, I don't know, one of the islands, Saipan or something, I don't remember.
Yeah.
The pictures here, do you know or maybe recall any people that you probably knew that were a casualty off the top of your head? It's been a long time now.
Yes, see if I can find them. There were some brothers
Oh, two
couple of
brothers,
brothers.
lost their lives?
lost their lives.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and of course it was during World War II that the Navy made it a point not to put brothers aboard the same ship.
Well, I remember that World War II had 5 brothers. They called them, their last name was Sullivan.
I think they were on the Iowa.
USS Iowa?
I think it was the
There was
USS
5 brothers on that ship,
5
and they got
brothers.
torpedoed, and all 5 were killed in that explosion.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, I remember. I was only a youngster then, but I remember everybody talking about it. When you lose 5 brothers in one bang.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of casualties. I think it was 600,000 American military were killed in World War II.
Oh yeah.
We had 16 million in uniform. 16 million is a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they managed to resurrect the Oklahoma, but it was too damaged to be put into service. But like I say, they did take the guns off of it, and they were towing it back to the States, to San Francisco, for junk.
Yeah.
And it got out so far and parted cable and went to the bottom, so it's about a couple of miles down in the ocean now. So that's where my bunk is,
Oh, your bunker's down there, huh?
right outside the communications
So
office.
technically speaking, you were a member of the crew of the Oklahoma, but because of your particular specialty, you were actually in the admiral's office.
Well, I was pretty close to the captain anyway.
Okay, the
He'd
captain.
call me across the corridor to help move tables around when we were in Long Beach for a company he was having brought in. The Filipino boy that waited on him would save the ice cream for us, for we yeomen that were there.
Did you find that the equipment you had was adequate for what you had to do?
Yes, and the training. Seems like with the training you acted somewhat automatically for what you should do under attack. Now, being a yeoman, you were in the office typing all the time and typing the messages as they came in, and realizing that right underneath you the Japanese code was being broken.
And the Japanese didn't know that.
I don't know. I don't think they did.
They would have made other precautions.
Yeah.
And where did you take basic training? 1939?
September 1939, they sent me all the way from Carbondale, Illinois. They were sending others to Great Lakes, but they sent me out to San Diego. So I went to, they cut my training down to 8 weeks from 12 weeks. And I had a way of getting out of duty. They, well, you know, we would be drilling a whole lot out and looking across the ocean over to North Island, where the planes would come in. And the chaplain asked, he wanted someone to sing in his choir. I volunteered. So I'm in practicing singing while my buddy's out there drilling into the hot sun. Now,
This was at the church, right?
Pardon?
This was at the church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But some of them made the mistake of paying too much attention to the planes flying over, and the chief that was drilling would pull them out, make them lay flat on their back and look up into the sun.
Well, you know, you reminded me one time I overheard that you were in a church over here in Framingham, one of the churches there. I don't know, something about an American flag. What was that all about?
I graduated with the minister of the church from Amherst College, but he, from the pulpit one time, apologized for his World War II service and said if he had it to do over, he would have been a conscientious objector. Now, what kind of a message is that to the young people? That wasn't the place to deliver it. He also had a son that was minister of a church downtown Framingham. And he made the mistake of specifically inviting the gays into the church rather than to say everybody is welcome to the church. So naturally he wanted to talk with me about it, and I said there's nothing to talk about. So I left and went over to Wayland, to a church there, where I would get a message, a good message, on Sunday morning.
Well, did they have a flag at the church?
Oh yes, they had a flag of the church, and I wrote them later saying the only thing I regretted was that I didn't walk up to the front of the church and take that flag out of there because it didn't belong there that morning.
Oh, well, okay, everybody's entitled to their opinion, and you're entitled to your opinion.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I have some opinions about the Navy.
Oh, well, I'd be interested in listening about that. I'm not a Navy man, but they brought me over and they brought me back, and thank you, United States Navy, for bringing me back, too. They didn't leave me over there.
Well, the powers to be put Admiral Kimmel in charge of the Navy out in Hawaii, and General Short in charge of the shore installations and all. Now, what they found out was that they were privately guarding special information that they were privileged to, but they didn't share it.
Yeah, I remember you telling us that at the beginning of the program then. Yeah.
They didn't. So they weren't working. They were sent out there to reinforce the fortress.
So some of their actions and behavior cost a lot of lives.
It would. One thing it caused was a lack of communications and time in communications.
Did you serve with Admiral Zumwalt?
No, I didn't serve with him.
Zumwalt.
Yeah, Zumwalt. But I followed some of his actions.
Oh, what were those?
And one action was he put the enlisted sailor in the same uniform as the chief petty officers
Oh, really?
had. What do you think that would do to the morale of the petty officer, chief petty officer?
Well, it would take an awful lot of credibility away from them and their position.
Absolutely.
Command position.
Absolutely.
Why would he do that?
Who in the heck knows?
Who in the hell knows?
Yeah.
Well,
The other thing he did was he put women aboard submarines
well,
where close quarters, and what do you think's going to happen?
well, they have women on the submarines now, and we haven't heard too much. Maybe there's things going on that they're just happening and covering up. Who knows? I don't know.
Well, they're too embarrassed to tell you.
Well, it could be. You know,
it's like
what is reality and what is perception?
Yeah.
They're two different things sometimes.
Yeah.
The reality of something and how they perceive it. How you perceive something and what the real thing is sometimes is not the same.
Well, another thing, it's taken so long for them to tell you how many suicides are in the armed forces. They're just now telling you there's something like 30 a day.
Well, do you know of any suicides during World War II?
No,
Oh, okay.
maybe it wasn't published.
Maybe-
Or maybe it didn't happen.
Yeah, it could be. What would you say to a youngster, 18-year-old, that was graduating from high school this summer about the military, if they were interested maybe in pursuing an enlistment in one of the armed services? What would you say to a young man or a young woman getting out of high school or college about the military? Would you say stay away or join, or what would you say to them?
I would say there's many opportunities for advancement. And one way you can do it is to talk with the recruiter and find out what opportunities are there and how they might mesh with your education and how you might be able to use it after you get out of the service. Because if they know you're serious about what you're trying to do, the officers will get busy and help you.
That's the experience that you found then when you were in the Navy.
That's the experience I found.
So if they found that you were energetic and basically intelligent and you wanted to get ahead, they would help you along.
Help me along.
Well, that made their job easier too. If you have your people underneath you that they support you and make you look good,
Yeah.
and they had the right action in
Yeah.
that particular case. Well, Jerry, it was very nice talking to you today. I'm glad that you took the time to come out here, bring your charts, and tell us a little bit about your personal experiences and your opinions on things. How old are you now, Jerry?
I'll be 92 next month.
92 years old
Yeah,
in March.
yeah, and I'm beginning to feel it.
Well, at 92, okay, I won't say, but okay. Hopefully I've got some years to look ahead, a good 10 to 11, 12 more years. So it was very nice talking to you. I appreciate you coming. You're a great friend. I really enjoy going to breakfast with you over at Orchard Hills. We have a lot of good conversation, and it was a good gelling of, well, I could say different generations, although I'm only maybe 10 or 15 years difference with you. I got about 12 years or so, and it was working out pretty good, though. And thank you very much for coming today and sharing it with us.
Well, thanks for the opportunity.